Baldur's Gate 3 almost didn't exist. We came within inches of losing the entire franchise. Wizards of the Coast even turned down Larian Studios originally when they first asked for the license. The same Larian who went on to make the best RPG in years. But that's just the latest chapter in a franchise that corporate clowns nearly killed twice. The first time in 2003 when they cancelled an 80% complete sequel. The second time by sitting on the license for 16 years. The Baldur's Gate 3 we're playing right now, it only exists because everything else failed first. Before Larian even laid their godly hands on it, Baldur's Gate 3 was a completely different game called Baldur's Gate 3 The Black Hound. Developed by Black Studios under Josh Sawyer, the legend behind Fallout New Vegas, Pillars of Eternity, Neverwinter Nights 2. This wasn't going to be a sequel, not really. Black Hound wasn't trying to outdo Baldur's Gate 2, it was trying to escape it. Smaller stakes, one region, one mystery, no god spawn, no saving the world, just you, a strange event, and a tangled mess of consequences you had to unravel through grit and conversation. It was more of a Planescape than a Faerun, more detective novel than a high fantasy epic. It was the kind of game that just trusted you to think and punished you when you didn't. It was an original story set in the Dale Lands, focused on guilt and consequence. You witness a woman named May Farrow kill a spectral black hound. The creature dies in your arms, binds its spirit to you, and now May thinks you're connected to her guilt. She starts hunting you, and the tagline for the game was, "You cannot kill guilt." And here's where it gets properly mental. They weren't just making another game in a standard engine. Black Isle were building a custom engine called Jefferson with 3D character models on 2D backgrounds, real-time lighting, dynamic shadows. They planned an entire trilogy around this concept, and the level cap for this game was deliberately set between 5 and 8 because they didn't want us to play a godlike power fantasy, just survival and tough choices. They designed a reputation system that tracked your standing across different regions and factions, quests that could fail forward, meaning your failures became part of the story instead of hitting a game over screen. And today that's fairly standard stuff, but that was genuinely revolutionary for 2003. But here's the corporate bit. Calling it Baldur's Gate 3 was what Josh Sawyer calls a legal trick. Interplay had just lost their general D&D license to Atari, but they still had the rights to use either Baldur's Gate or Icewind Dale in a title, so they slapped the Baldur's Gate name on this original story just to fulfill their contracts. The worst part though is it was 80% complete when they killed it. 80%. They built a custom engine for a game that would never ship. It's a bit sad really. So why didn't we get it? Well, Interplay Entertainment were hemorrhaging money, 20 million in losses that year alone, and back then that was a hell of a lot of money. First they lost the general D&D license to Atari, so suddenly half of their RPG pipeline was worthless. Then the talent started leaving. Fergus Urquhart, who founded Black Isle, resigned. Josh Sawyer followed him out of the door. December the 8th, 2003, Interplay shut down Black Isle Studios completely. The Black Hound died with it, and just like that, a visionary RPG was buried by quarterly earnings reports. No post-mortem, no farewell, just lights off, doors locked, and a half-finished masterpiece tossed in the bin. But here's the human cost that no one really talks about. Sawyer was so haunted by the Black Hound that in 2007 he started making a Neverwinter Nights 2 module to try and recreate it, and he never finished that either. So when Pillars of Eternity shipped years later, they named a tavern the Black Hound Inn. So not only is that an Easter egg, but it's also a memorial for what they lost. And the reputation system in Pillars was straight from the Black Hound. 20 years later, and Sawyer's still trying to finish what that corporate incompetence destroyed. So for the next 16 years, Baldur's Gate 3 was just a name on a shelf. Wizards of the Coast had the rights, but they had no clue what to do with them. Meanwhile, the industry around them was going completely mental. Obsidian, the studio formed by ex-Black Isle devs who actually understood RPGs, they wanted it, but they didn't get it. Beamdog managed to remaster the old games, but that was just polishing what already existed. The scary part is this was in the era of everything must be live service. Publishers were turning beloved franchises into always online dog shit. Command & Conquer became a mobile game. Dungeon Keeper got the same treatment. And imagine if Baldur's Gate 3 had landed at EA during their single-player games are dead phase. We could have gotten a Baldur's Gate Sword Coast Online, season passes for companions, microtransactions for spell slots. And remember, this was at peak Ubisoft tower climbing, peak EA lootbox hell. If BG3 had been greenlit in 2015, we'd have seen ability packs, dialogue tokens, and Karlach romance DLC for $12.99. One bad decision and Baldur's Gate 3 became another franchise murdered by monetization. But even when the When the right studio came knocking, Wizards still managed to screw it up initially. In 2014, Sven Vinker approaches Wizards about making a D&D game, fresh off the back of Divinity Original Sin's success, a proper turn-based CRPG with actual systems and meaningful choices, and Wizards' response was that you're too small, the studio that had just proved they could make exactly the kind of RPG that D&D deserved. Fast forward 3 years later, Divinity Original Sin 2 drops and it's a masterpiece, and suddenly Wizards realised they might have been idiots. When they finally asked for a pitch in 2017, Larian was crunching on Divinity Original Sin 2's release, so they hastily threw together a BG3 design document between bug fixes. Sven even later admitted it was really bad. They begged for an extension, got the deal literally weeks after Divinity Original Sin 2 launched in August 2017. Now think about that, the best RPG in decades almost didn't happen because of corporate timing. If Divinity had flopped, if Larian hadn't begged for more time, if Wizards had picked literally anyone else, we'd be living in a timeline without Larian's Baldur's Gate 3. But we did get Larian's approach, completely starting over, a turn-based game because D&D is turn-based, cinematic because it's 2019, not 1999. They asked what a proper D&D RPG should look like today, not how to recreate 1998. The Black Hound would have been so interesting, intimate, investigative, focused on guilt and consequence. There's even concept art kicking around that shows a completely different aesthetic. Darker, more grounded, more psychological. I would have loved to see Sawyer's vision realised, but what we got from Larian is nothing short of extraordinary. BG3 didn't just meet expectations, it absolutely shattered them. Turn-based combat that feels cinematic, characters with genuine depth and agency, systems so robust that players are still discovering new interactions years later. The bear scene alone generated more hype than most games manage in their entire runtime. Larian took everything that made D&D special and translated it into something that works for everybody. They gave us mocap performances, full voice acting for every line of dialogue, cinematic camera work. They built a world that says yes to player creativity instead of no, you can't do that. Credit where it's due, we got the best possible timeline. The industry needed to evolve, technology needed to catch up, and maybe most importantly, we needed a developer with Larian's specific mix of ambition and humility to pull it off. In 2003, the Black Hound would have shipped to a much more niche audience on outdated technology. In 2023, BG3 became a cultural phenomenon that proved RPGs could be mainstream without being dumbed down. The original Baldur's Gate 3 died in a corporate boardroom 20 years ago, but the version that we got, well, the suits killed one game and accidentally made room for something much better. That's the only time their incompetence worked out. Larian didn't just save a franchise, they proved that RPGs could be bigger, better, and more ambitious than anyone ever thought possible. So next time you boot up Baldur's Gate 3, remember, it only existed because everything else collapsed first. A dead dog, a cancelled game, and a Belgian studio with more vision than most publishers combined. And if you made it this far, you're a real one. Drop a like, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel so I can justify this weekend's takeaway to the missus. Big love, see you in the next one.